The red on the snow looked almost black under the dying light of Frost Hollow. Officer Caleb Rowan pressed his hand against the cold steering wheel, about to turn back toward town, until a blur of motion burst from the trees. A little boy, no older than 9, stumbled into the headlights, face streaked with tears, his breath fogging in the icy air. "They beat my mama," he cried, voice cracking. "She's dying." For a heartbeat, everything went still. The wind, the world, even the heartbeat of Caleb's German shepherd Axel, who froze beside him, ears pricked, muscles coiled. Then Axel barked once, sharp and urgent, as if commanding his partner to move. Caleb threw open the door and ran, snow crunching under his boots as the boy clung to him, sobbing. Blood stained the child's sleeve. Somewhere in the forest beyond, a woman's faint cry echoed, so soft it might have been the wind. That night, beneath the storm clouds of Wyoming, a single act of courage would awaken 3 broken souls, and prove that even in the coldest darkness, faith still has a pulse. Before we begin, drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far kindness can travel. The storm had swallowed Frost Hollow, Wyoming in white silence. Wind curled around the pine trees like a living thing, whispering through the frozen valley. Officer Caleb Rowan steered his patrol SUV along County Road 7, the tires crunching on hard ice. The world outside his windshield looked painted in shades of gray and silver, empty roads, ghostly fence posts, and breath that turned to frost the second it left his lips. Caleb was 36, a quiet man whose strength lived not in his words but in his restraint. Years in the military police had carved a certain discipline into him. The straight posture, the even tone, the way he scanned every shadow without needing to think. He wore his Navy winter sheriff's uniform, zipped high to the collar, a scarf tucked under it, and a badge dulled from the cold. His storm-gray eyes flicked from the road to the tree line, where the snow kept falling, endless and indifferent. Beside him, in the passenger seat, lay Axel, a 6-year-old German shepherd, fur sable and black, eyes golden and alert. A faint scar crossed his right shoulder, the memory of a bullet that had ended his K-9 service but not his spirit. He sat upright, steady, a silent sentinel. Every few moments his nose twitched, scanning the air as though the snow itself carried whispers. Frost Hollow was a small town, the kind that barely woke before sunrise. A few houses flickered with dim porch lights. A gas station sign blinked red through the haze. It was just another slow patrol, the kind Caleb liked best, until the quiet broke. Through the blur of falling snow, a shape stumbled into the road. Jesus! Caleb slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded sideways, tires scraping ice. Axel barked, a sharp warning. The headlights caught a figure, small, frantic, a child running straight toward them, waving his arms. Caleb threw the gear into park and leapt out. "Hey, kid, stop! You'll get yourself—" But the boy was already collapsing to his knees, gasping, eyes wide with terror. His face was pale, dirt and snow smeared across his cheeks. He couldn't have been more than 9 years old. His brown hair clung wet to his forehead, and he wore only a thin plaid shirt, torn at the sleeve, over a sweater much too small. No coat, no gloves, just raw cold and fear. They beat my mama," he choked out, his breath catching in sobs. "She's dying." The words cut through the wind like a blade. Caleb dropped to his knees beside the boy, the crunch of snow loud beneath his boots. "Easy, son, easy," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "You're safe now. Tell me your name." The boy's lips trembled. Noah Reed." "All right, Noah." Caleb took off one glove and touched the boy's wrist, cold, trembling. "Where's your mama?" Back there." Noah pointed toward the woods behind him, where a faint trail disappeared into drifting snow. "By the trailers. She can't move." Caleb's breath clouded the air. "All right," he said softly. "We'll go to her, but first we've got to get you warm." He lifted Noah into his arms. The boy was light, almost weightless, and carried him to the patrol car. Axel stood halfway out to the open door, tail wagging low, sensing something fragile in the air. "Axel, easy," Caleb said. The dog backed up, giving space as Caleb set the boy gently in the back seat. Noah shivered, hugging himself. Axel turned and, after a brief hesitation, climbed up beside him. For a moment, the only sound inside the car was the boy's unsteady breathing and the low hum of the heater. Then, something small slid from Noah's pocket. A photograph, creased and half torn. Caleb picked it up carefully. It showed a young woman with soft brown hair and kind eyes holding Noah in front of what looked like an old car shop. A faint oil stain smudged the corner. The right side of the picture was ripped, the rest worn smooth from being touched too often. Caleb handed it back. "That your mom?" Noah nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. She works at the garage near the highway, but she said not to tell anyone about him." "About who?" Noah's eyes darted away. "Her boyfriend. Travis." Caleb's jaw tightened, though he kept his tone even. "All right. You don't have to talk right now." He turned the engine over, headlights slicing the storm ahead. "You just tell me where to go." Noah pointed with a shaking hand. "Down that way, the old trailer park, behind the quarry." "Got it." As the car started forward, Axel shifted beside Noah, laying his head gently on the boy's lap. Noah blinked in surprise, then placed his small hand on the dog's neck. The trembling slowed. Outside, the snow deepened, covering tire tracks almost as soon as they were made. Caleb leaned forward, squinting through the storm. His radio crackled faintly with static, but he ignored it. The boy's words echoed in his head. "They beat my mama. She's dying." He glanced into the rearview mirror. Noah was watching him, eyes huge and frightened, but inside that fear was something else, a flicker of faith. "We'll find her," Caleb said firmly, meeting his gaze through the mirror. "You have my word." The boy nodded, silent tears tracking down his cheeks. They drove on. The forest closed in, the road narrowing into white oblivion. Every few minutes, Axel gave a low rumble from his chest. Not a growl, but a warning, a sense that something was near. Caleb trusted that sound. It had saved his life before. He reached out and flicked on the spotlight mounted to the roof. The beam swept over the roadside pines, glinting off ice-coated branches. Somewhere out there, beneath that storm, was a woman fighting for her life. Caleb adjusted his grip on the wheel. "Hold on, Noah," he murmured. "We're getting close." Axel's ears lifted, eyes focused on the woods ahead. The storm roared louder, wind pushing snow in wild spirals. Inside the car, the heater hummed. The lights glowed soft amber. A man, a boy, and a dog, bound by a moment they didn't yet understand, drove into the heart of a frozen wilderness, toward a truth that would change all three forever. The radio crackled again. Caleb reached for it, but before he could respond, Noah's voice came soft from the back seat. "Do you think she's still breathing?" Caleb glanced at him in the mirror, the wipers sweeping slow across the glass. "We'll make sure she is." Axel let out a quiet whine, his tail brushing Noah's knee. And then the patrol car vanished into the storm, its headlights swallowed by the falling snow, chasing a heartbeat somewhere in the frozen dark. The tires groaned against the snow as the patrol car wound deeper into the frozen woods. The light from the headlights stretched thin across the trees, slicing through the white darkness. Officer Caleb Rowan kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other brushing the radio as static whispered in and out. The storm hadn't let up. It pressed against the windshield like a living wall. Beside him, Noah Reed leaned forward in the back seat, small hands clutched tightly around the torn photograph. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Down there. It's near the creek. The trailer with the blue door." Axel's ears perked up from the passenger seat, tail stiff. He pressed his nose to the glass, breathing fog against it. The German shepherd's body tensed, every muscle tuned to an invisible scent trail. Caleb slowed the car and peered ahead. The faint outline of several rusted mobile homes appeared through the haze, their roofs sagging under the weight of snow. Frost Hollow's forgotten edge, an unregistered trailer park long since abandoned except by those who had nowhere else to go. Caleb parked the vehicle and cut the engine. "Stay close to me," he said firmly, turning to Noah. The boy nodded, his lips pale, eyes wide with a mixture of dread and hope. Caleb handed him his wool scarf. "Keep that on, it's bitter out here." Noah wrapped it around his neck, the fabric almost swallowing his chin. When the door opened, the cold hit like a slap. The air smelled of pine sap, rust, and something sour underneath, like spilled alcohol. Axel jumped down first, nose low to the ground, then looked back as if signaling the path was clear. Caleb followed, flashlight in hand, boots sinking into the snow with each step. They reached the line of trailers. Every surface was scarred by years of neglect, peeling paint, shattered windows, and doors hanging crooked on rusted hinges. The snow had half-buried one side, turning it into a tomb of frost and silence. Caleb swept the flashlight beam across the nearest door. It was blue once, long ago. Noah pointed. "That one." His voice cracked. Caleb nodded and approached carefully. "Axel, stay close." The dog padded beside him, silent but alert. The door was already half open, swinging slightly with the wind. He pushed it wider, the hinges squealing like a cry. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness inside. The place was a wreck. A table lay overturned, a chair snapped in two, and shards of glass glittered faintly on the linoleum floor. The stale air reeked of cheap whiskey and coppery blood. A faint draft whistled through a broken window, stirring the curtains like ghostly breath. Caleb's chest tightened. He turned to Noah. "Stay here, okay? Don't move until I tell you." Noah hesitated, but obeyed, clutching the scarf around his neck. Axel's tail rose. He stepped forward, head low, sniffing the air. Then, without warning, the dog growled, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the floor. He moved toward a narrow hallway at the back. Caleb followed, flashlight beam shaking slightly as it caught the edge of a small bedroom. And there she was. Maya Reed, about 31, lay sprawled on the floor beside a broken dresser. Her dark chestnut hair was tangled and streaked with dried blood. A bruise spread across her cheek, another darkened her collarbone. She wore a gray mechanic's jacket over a faded shirt, the logo of Harper's Auto Garage still faintly visible. Her boots were mismatched, one missing entirely. Her skin looked almost gray against the cold floor. Caleb dropped to his knees beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. There it was, faint but steady. A pulse. Relief surged through him like heat. Noah darted in before Caleb could stop him. "Mama!" The boy fell beside her, grabbing her hand, his tears dripping onto her knuckles. "Please, wake up, Mama!" Axel circled the small space, nose twitching. He stopped near a splintered table leg and sniffed something dark on the floor. Caleb followed his gaze. Bloodstains. Then, near it, a shattered bottle of whiskey, its glass jagged, one side sticky with something darker than liquor. Caleb picked up a piece with a gloved hand. The label read Holt's Reserve, and beside it, half buried under debris, lay a crumpled receipt from the Frost Hollow Gas Mart. The name printed across the top froze him where he knelt. Travis Holt. He remembered the name from an old call file. A man in his late 30s, local, once a miner before the quarry shut down. Multiple reports of disorderly conduct, suspected in minor theft and domestic complaints, but never enough evidence for a charge. Caleb had heard whispers that Holt had been dabbling in illegal liquor distribution, moving bootleg whiskey and small-batch moonshine through the mountains. Caleb slipped the receipt and bottle fragment into an evidence pouch from his belt. "That's him," he murmured under his breath. He turned to Noah, who was still holding his mother's hand. "Noah, we need to get her help. She's breathing, but she's weak." Noah nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. He said he'd come back," he whispered, voice trembling. "If she told anyone, he said He couldn't finish. Caleb rested a hand on his shoulder. "Not tonight, son. No one's coming back while I'm here." He stood scanning the small room for anything else, footprints, fingerprints, anything. The back door was cracked open, wind pushing snow inside. Whoever did this had fled in a hurry. On the table lay a burned matchbook from a local bar, the Rusted Spur, one of Frost Hollow's oldest dive joints, notorious for trouble. He pocketed it. "Axel," he called quietly. The dog lifted his head, eyes gleaming in the flashlight beam. "Watch the door." Axel moved instantly, positioning himself by the entrance, tail stiff, Caleb, crouched again and unzipped his heavy coat, wrapping it around Maya's upper body. Her skin was cold, but not lifeless. He felt the faint rise and fall of her chest. "Hang in there, ma'am," he murmured. "You've got people fighting for you now." He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Rowan, requesting immediate medical response to Frost Hollow Trailer Park, off County 7, northern edge by the creek. One adult female, multiple injuries, unconscious but stable pulse." A burst of static, then a voice answered, faint and distorted by the storm. "Copy that, Officer Rowan. Ambulance ETA. 15 minutes, maybe longer. Roads are near impassable." Caleb exhaled. "Roger that. We'll hold until they arrive." Noah pressed closer to his mother. Axel walked back and lay down beside them, his body curved protectively around the boy. The scene was still except for the whisper of wind and the faint crackle of the radio. Caleb stood by the doorway, eyes scanning the tree line through the curtain of snow. Somewhere out there, Travis Holt was breathing the same frozen air, maybe thinking he'd gotten away with it. Caleb's jaw set like stone. He'd seen cruelty before, but something about this, about the small hand clutching his scarf, the boy's fragile faith, lit a different kind of fire in him. The minutes crawled by. Snow fell heavier, muting every sound except the low hum of Axel's breathing and Noah's soft sobs. Caleb checked his watch, then looked down at the evidence pouch in his pocket. The name Holt gleamed faintly under the flashlight. When the first flash of red lights pierced through the trees, relief swept over him. The ambulance's engine rumbled faintly through the wind. He turned back toward the boy. "They're here," he said softly. Noah looked up, his face streaked with tears and melting snow. "Will she be okay?" Caleb nodded once, though his eyes betrayed the uncertainty he couldn't voice. "She's got a chance. That's what matters." Axel gave a low bark, as if agreeing. Outside, the siren wailed closer, bouncing off the frozen trees like a warning to the night. Caleb stepped onto the porch, raising his flashlight high to guide them in. He could already see the paramedics climbing out, bundled in orange parkas, pushing a stretcher through the snow. Behind him, in the small flickering glow of the flashlight, Noah pressed his forehead to his mother's hand. Axel stayed beside them, unblinking, loyal as breath itself. Caleb looked once more at the bottle on the floor, at the bruises on the woman's face, and the half-torn photograph still in Noah's pocket. Then he turned toward the sound of the sirens and whispered to himself, "You picked the wrong family to break, Holt." The ambulance tires hissed over packed snow as it rolled into Frost Hollow's small medical outpost, a squat brick building tucked between the sheriff's office and the frozen diner. Its single floodlight flickered against the storm, throwing long shadows across the icy parking lot. Inside the patrol car trailing behind, Officer Caleb Rowan guided Noah Reed down from the seat, one hand on the boy's shoulder. The child's cheeks were raw from cold and tears, his small boots dragging through the snow. Behind them, Axel, the sable and black German shepherd, jumped lightly to the ground and shook off the frost that clung to his fur. Caleb followed the paramedics through the glass doors. Heat hit his face at once, a wave of dry air tinged with antiseptic and coffee. The fluorescent lights were harsh, almost too clean compared to the chaos they'd left behind. Inside the narrow lobby, a single nurse at the front desk jolted upright. Nora Jenkins, mid-40s, a woman with a round face framed by loose blonde curls, wore her green medical scrubs under a thick cardigan. A local who'd served Frost Hollow since before Caleb joined the force, she had the no-nonsense patience of someone who'd seen both blizzards and bar fights. "What happened?" Nora asked, already moving from behind the counter. "Domestic assault," Caleb said. "Unconscious female, multiple contusions, exposure to cold. Found her out by the quarry trailers. Nora's eyes widened. Lord help her. Bring her in, room 2. The paramedics rushed past with Maya Reed, still motionless on the stretcher, a tangle of dark hair falling across her face. Her breathing rasped shallowly beneath the oxygen mask. The boy followed close, clutching Caleb's sleeve. "It's okay, Noah," Caleb said quietly. "She's in good hands now." They entered the small treatment room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, an EKG monitor blinking faintly. Nora worked quickly, unbuttoning Maya's jacket, cutting away soaked fabric, her hands sure and gentle. "Pulse steady, but weak," she muttered. "Bruising on the ribs and left temple, possible concussion." She glanced up at Caleb. "You did right bringing her here fast." He nodded, standing near the doorway. Axel had settled on the floor just outside the room, head resting between his paws, eyes fixed on the scene. The dog's chest rose and fell in a slow rhythm, as though guarding both the silence and the child beside him. When Nora finished cleaning the wounds, she turned to Noah and crouched down. "You're a brave young man," she said softly. "Your mom is tough. She's going to pull through." Noah nodded, but said nothing. His hand slipped into Axel's fur, fingers trembling. A new voice entered the room, a woman's, firm and calm. "Rowan." Caleb turned. Sheriff Dana Whitmore stepped through the doorway, brushing snow from her dark overcoat. In her early 50s, Dana carried the authority of 2 decades in law enforcement. Her hair, streaked with gray, was pulled into a low ponytail beneath her wide-brimmed hat, and her badge shone silver against the navy coat. Her presence filled the narrow room like a gust of winter air. "Sheriff," Caleb said, straightening, "we found her just in time. She's stable." Dana's sharp eyes took in the boy, the dog, the unconscious woman. "I heard. Dispatch said you called in from the trailers. Any sign of the suspect?" "Not yet," Caleb replied, "but I found a bottle of Holt's Reserve and a gas station receipt with his name on it. The place was wrecked. Looked like a fight. He's gone, but he left in a hurry." Dana folded her arms. "Travis Holt." The name came out like a curse. "We've been circling that man for months. Illegal liquor, small-scale distribution, nothing big enough to stick until now." She looked down at Noah. "The boy see anything?" Caleb shook his head. "He found her after. He ran to the road to get help." Dana exhaled through her nose. "All right. I'll have the team secure the scene and run prints once the storm clears. You stay close to them tonight." "Yes, ma'am." She placed a hand on his shoulder before leaving. "Good work, Caleb. Sometimes the smallest rescues carry the biggest weight." When the door closed, the room quieted again. Nora dimmed the overhead light, leaving only the soft hum of machines. Maya lay still, but color had begun to creep back into her face. Caleb pulled up a chair near the window, the snow outside thickening into white walls. Axel padded closer to the boy, curling at his feet. The warmth of the room and the rhythmic beeping lulled everything into uneasy calm. For a while, no one spoke. Then Noah whispered, "She always said he'd stop drinking." Caleb looked at him. "Sometimes people like that don't stop until someone makes them." Noah stared at the floor. "I tried to fight him once. He just laughed." Caleb reached out and rested a steady hand on his shoulder. "You did the bravest thing you could, running for help. You saved her life." Axel lifted his head at the sound of Caleb's voice, his tail thumping once against the tile. Then, as if understanding, he laid his chin on Noah's knee. Hours passed. The blizzard outside buried the town deeper in snow. The clinic staff moved quietly through the halls. One nurse brewed coffee in the corner, its scent mingling with antiseptic. At some point, exhaustion overcame Noah. Curled in the chair beside his mother's bed, he fell asleep, his hand still wrapped in Axel's thick fur. The dog didn't move except to occasionally glance at the door. His ears twitched at every footstep, every rattle of wind. Near midnight, Caleb stepped outside into the hallway. The storm still moaned beyond the windows, distant and constant. Sheriff Dana was gone, leaving behind only a short note on the counter. Investigate Holt's connections to the mountain routes. Suspect, ringleader of illegal alcohol trade. Follow up tomorrow. He folded the paper into his pocket. The thought of Holt hiding somewhere in those mountains set his jaw tight. He'd seen men like that before, bullies who mistook fear for power. Back in the room, a low sound made him pause. Axel was awake, head lifted, ears pointed toward the bed. The dog gave a short, uneasy whine. Caleb frowned and stepped closer. Then he saw Noah. The boy was twitching in his sleep, breath shallow, whispering something unintelligible. Axel rose quietly and placed one paw on the edge of Noah's chair, pressing close. The boy's breathing steadied, his hand finding the dog's neck even in dreams. Caleb watched in silence. The image struck something deep, a memory of nights after his own deployments, when only the weight of Axel's head on his lap had pulled him back from nightmares. He looked at the boy and the dog and the bruised woman lying between them and realized this night had tied them all together, whether they knew it or not. When dawn finally came, pale and cold, the storm had begun to ease. Frost Hollow lay buried in quiet white. From the window, Caleb could see the faint pink of sunrise struggling through the clouds. He stood there for a moment, coffee cooling in his hands, eyes fixed on the endless snow beyond the glass. Behind him, Nora's voice broke the silence. "She's holding steady," the nurse said softly. "Might wake soon if she keeps improving." Caleb turned, relief flickering across his tired features. "That's good news?" Nora smiled faintly. "You can tell the boy when he wakes. He deserves to hear something kind today." He nodded, looking once more at the sleeping figures. The child, the mother, the dog, all framed in the fragile peace of a small-town clinic. For the first time in years, Caleb felt something stir in his chest that wasn't anger or duty. It was something gentler, something like hope. Outside, the wind had gone still, and for a brief moment, Frost Hollow seemed to breathe again. The morning broke pale and brittle over Frost Hollow, sunlight barely piercing the gray sky that still held the last breath of the storm. The town was quiet again, too quiet. Officer Caleb Rowan drove north with Axel, his German Shepherd partner, the patrol car humming low over the snow-packed back road. The heater hissed, struggling to warm the air. Ahead, the rugged hills rose like the backs of sleeping giants, and beyond them lay the Windriver Quarry, once the town's lifeline, now an empty grave of stone and echo. Caleb hadn't been back there since his early days on the force. It used to employ half the men in Frost Hollow before it shut down, Travis Holt among them. The place had a bad reputation now, rumors of fights, smuggling, even a few disappearances. Sheriff Dana's words replayed in his head. Follow the mountain routes. Holt's hiding something up there. Axel stood in the passenger seat, front paws on the dash, eyes fixed ahead. His fur bristled with alert tension. Caleb reached out, giving a brief scratch behind his ear. "Easy, boy. Just another day at work." The old access road was half buried in snow. Rusted fencing ran along the edge, broken in places where trucks once rolled through. He parked the car near the entrance, the sign, Windriver Quarry, closed, barely visible under frost. The wind carried the faint tang of oil and something sharper, moonshine. Caleb stepped out, zipping his heavy jacket higher. His dark patrol coat, streaked with salt and dust, hung stiff with cold. He pulled a flashlight from his belt, though the sun was up, and slung his camera over his shoulder. Axel jumped out beside him, tail low, ears sharp. The quarry stretched below them, a vast pit carved into the mountain, surrounded by skeletal cranes and rusted conveyor belts. Pools of half-frozen water shimmered dull silver at the bottom. Caleb crouched near the rim, scanning the slope. Fresh tire tracks cut through the snow. "Someone's been here recently," he muttered. Axel sniffed the ground, following the tracks toward a cluster of old wooden sheds built into the rock wall. The dog stopped suddenly, nose pressed to the ground, tail rigid. Caleb followed, boots crunching softly over gravel. They approached a large wooden crate shoved under a tarp. The smell hit him first. Strong alcohol, sour, and sweet. He pulled the tarp aside. Inside were sealed glass bottles, their labels hand-printed and cheap. Bootleg whiskey stacked in straw. "Bingo," Caleb whispered, raising his camera and snapping photos. Then Axel moved again, circling the back of the crate. His nose caught something else, an oily patch on the frozen dirt, the faint shimmer of spilled fuel. He gave a low grunt and pawed at it. Caleb knelt and touched the surface. The oil was fresh. Someone had refueled here within the last day. "Good boy," he said under his breath, giving Axel a quiet pat. "You found their trail." He crouched lower, setting his camera to record a continuous loop of the scene. Bottles, tracks, the oil stain. He zoomed out, capturing the surrounding area, making sure the footage could hold in court. As he adjusted the focus, the faint sound of an engine drifted through the gorge. Caleb froze. Axel's ears twitched. He looked toward the upper ridge where a dirt road wound down toward the pit. The growl of the motor grew louder. Caleb quickly turned off his flashlight and gestured for Axel to stay low. Together, they slipped behind a rusted loader, the metal cold against their backs. Moments later, a pickup truck rattled into view, an old Chevy with a busted taillight. Two men climbed out, heavy boots crunching. The first was tall and broad, mid-40s, wearing a brown canvas jacket and beanie, his beard streaked with gray. The second, slimmer, in his 30s, wore a red flannel coat and work gloves, his voice rasping with cigarettes. Caleb pressed closer to the shadows, camera still rolling. The taller man kicked at the crate. "Told you it'd be fine leaving it here. Holt's got another load coming in from the ridge tonight." The other spat into the snow. "You sure the cops ain't sniffing around? That Rowan guy's nosy. He was asking about Holt last week." "Relax," the first man replied. "Holt said he took care of things. The woman at the garage won't talk again." At that, Caleb's stomach tightened. The words crawled under his skin. He caught Axel's eyes and held up a hand. "Stay quiet." The thinner man frowned. "You mean that Reed woman? I heard she's in the clinic." The tall man smirked, voice turning low and cold. "Not for long. Travis said if she opens her mouth, he'll finish what he started. Don't let the kid get in the way." Caleb felt the blood drain from his face. The sound of Noah's small voice last night, "She said he'd stop drinking," echoed in his mind. Then, somewhere deep in the quarry, a faint metallic clang broke the silence. The men turned sharply. "You hear that?" Caleb cursed under his breath. He gripped Axel's collar, holding him still. The German shepherd quivered, muscles coiled like wire. The men raised their flashlights, beams sweeping the shadows. Caleb ducked lower, flattening himself against the loader. His camera hung at his side, still recording. After a tense minute, the taller man shook his head. "Probably just the wind." The thinner one wasn't convinced. "Wind don't sound like that." They argued in hushed tones. Then came the sound that froze even Axel, a sharp gunshot from somewhere up the ridge, echoing down like thunder. The men startled. "That's Holt's signal," the tall one hissed. "Let's move. Load what you can." Axel gave a low growl, almost inaudible, but Caleb could feel the vibration through the leash. "Easy," he whispered. "We're not ready." The two men dragged one crate each toward the truck. Their boots left deep prints in the snow. When the engine roared back to life, Caleb risked a peek over the loader's edge, watching them drive off toward the north ridge. When the sound faded, he finally exhaled. He let go of Axel, who instantly padded forward, sniffing the tracks. The dog's hackles were still up, breath misting in quick bursts. "Yeah, I heard it too," Caleb murmured. "That shot wasn't just a signal. Someone's warning someone." He checked the camera footage. It had caught everything. The crates, the faces, and, faintly, the men's conversation. Enough to confirm what he'd feared. Travis Holt was tied to a larger operation, and Maya's beating had been meant as a message. Caleb looked toward the ridge where smoke now drifted faintly from a chimney half hidden by pines. Maybe a cabin, maybe more, but with the roads iced over and backup miles away, pursuit would be suicide. He glanced down at Axel, who stood rigid beside him, eyes glowing amber in the gray light. "We'll head back," he said quietly. "Let Dana see this, then we come back with help." Axel gave a low grunt, as if reluctant to leave. Caleb smiled grimly. "Yeah, I know. I don't like walking away either." They began the climb back toward the patrol car. The wind picked up again, sweeping across the quarry, carrying faint echoes of distant voices, rough laughter, boots on stone, and the metallic jingle of bottles. Somewhere out there, Holt was watching, maybe even listening. Caleb pulled his collar higher, the cold biting his skin. "They think this town's too small to fight back," he said under his breath. "Let's prove them wrong." Axel trotted ahead, leaving a trail of paw prints that blurred quickly beneath the falling snow. The storm was returning, and with it, the feeling that the mountain itself was holding its breath. The first light of dawn bled through the frosted windows of Frost Hollow Medical Outpost, painting faint gold lines across the sterile white walls. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world so still it seemed afraid to move. Inside Room 2, the hum of medical machines blended with the faint ticking of a wall clock. Maya Reed stirred for the first time in 2 days. Her eyelids fluttered weakly before she winced at the light. Her throat was dry, her chest tight, and when she tried to move, pain lanced through her ribs. "Easy," came a calm voice. Officer Caleb Rowan rose from the chair beside her bed, the weariness in his gray eyes replaced by quiet relief. His dark winter uniform was creased from long hours of vigil, and his hands still smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic. "You're safe, Maya. You've been out for a while." Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Noah! Where's Noah?" "He's right here." Caleb nodded toward the corner. The boy sat curled under a blanket on a small couch, head resting against Axel, the German shepherd who had refused to leave his side. Axel lifted his head at the sound of Maya's voice, tail thumping softly on the floor. The dog's amber eyes gleamed with the alert gentleness of a creature that understood pain far too well. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. "My baby," she whispered. Caleb helped her sit up slightly, adjusting the pillow behind her. "He hasn't left this room. Neither has Axel." Her voice came out cracked, barely a whisper. You found us?" Caleb nodded. "Noah did. He ran into the road. He's the reason you're alive." Maya's breath hitched. "He shouldn't have seen me like that." Caleb shook his head. He saw a mother who fought to survive. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Maya's gaze drifted toward the window, watching the sunlight glint off snowdrifts outside. "He did this," she said finally. "Travis." Her voice hardened around the name like frost. Caleb pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "Tell me what happened, Maya. I need your account while it's clear in your mind." She took a shaky breath. "He came home angry that night. Said someone tipped off the sheriff about his deliveries. I told him I wanted him gone, that I was done hiding what he was doing. He laughed at me." Her fingers clenched the blanket. "When I said I'd go to the police, he snapped. I remember the sound of the bottle before it broke." Caleb's jaw tightened. He scribbled notes quickly. "He was using you as cover, wasn't he? Storing shipments near your house?" "Yes," she whispered. "He'd keep crates under the floorboards in the shed, sometimes in the truck bed when he needed to move fast. He said the less I knew, the safer I'd be, but I knew enough. There were men, 3 of them, always showing up at night." "Did you recognize any of them?" Maya frowned, rubbing her temple. One had a tattoo of a crow on his neck. The others I never saw clearly. She paused. "He drove a silver pickup truck, no plates. The rear bumper was dented on the left side. He always parked it behind the shed so the neighbors couldn't see." Caleb wrote down every detail. The memory of the truck matched the tire tracks he'd seen at Windriver Quarry. Maya's voice broke again. "I told him I was done lying for him. He hit me. And then—" her hand went to her ribs unconsciously. "I don't remember much after that. I just remember waking up on the floor and seeing Noah's face before everything went dark." Caleb's throat tightened. "You don't have to talk about it anymore tonight." She shook her head. You need to stop him, Officer Rowan. He won't stop. He'll come back for me. He always does. Caleb leaned forward. He won't get the chance. You have my word. From the corner, Noah stirred, rubbing his eyes. When he saw his mother sitting up, he bolted upright. Mama! He ran to the bed and threw his arms around her waist, sobbing with relief. You're awake. I thought you were gone. Maya kissed the top of his head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. Axel rose from his spot and walked to the bedside, pressing his nose against Maya's hand. She smiled weakly, stroking the dog's fur. You kept them safe, didn't you? Caleb smiled faintly. He takes his job seriously. The door opened quietly, and Nora Jenkins, the nurse, stepped in. Her curly hair was tied back today, and she carried a clipboard under her arm. Well, look who's back with us, she said gently. How's the pain? Manageable, Maya replied, her voice steadier now. Nora nodded, checking the monitors. You'll stay another night for observation. Sheriff Whitmore will want to take your statement officially when you're stronger. Caleb stood. I'll let her know she's awake. Before he could leave, Maya caught his sleeve. Officer Rowan. Thank you. He met her gaze. You don't owe me thanks. Just get well. That's how we win. Outside in the hallway, the hum of the clinic felt heavier. Caleb leaned against the wall, staring down at his notepad filled with Travis Holt's name. Every instinct told him the man was escalating, moving from smuggling to silencing witnesses. A faint sound made him look up, soft footsteps. It was Sheriff Dana Whitmore, coat draped over her shoulders, hat pulled low. She must have returned early from the station. You look like a man who hasn't slept, she said, stopping beside him. Caleb managed a tired grin. She woke up. She confirmed what we suspected, Holt's running distribution through the quarry. She mentioned a silver pickup, no plates. Donna's sharp eyes flickered with calculation. That matches a report from the Highway Patrol 2 nights ago. A silver Chevy seen, leaving the North Ridge past midnight, hauling crates. They didn't stop it because of the storm. Caleb nodded grimly. He's still moving product, maybe planning to clean house before we get close. Dana folded her arms. Then we tighten the noose. I'll request a warrant for Holt's property and send a deputy to monitor the back roads. I'll check the quarry again tonight, Caleb said. Dana frowned. You go back up there. You don't go alone. He looked down at Axel, who stood silently at his heel. I never do. The sheriff gave a dry smile. Fair point. Be careful, Rowan. Men like Holt don't scare easy. When she left, Caleb returned to the room briefly. Noah had fallen asleep again, curled against Axel, while Maya lay awake, watching the snow drift past the window. For the first time, her expression was softer, almost peaceful. Caleb knew peace in Frost Hollow never lasted, but for now, it was enough. He stepped outside into the biting cold. The air smelled of pine and distant smoke. Somewhere out there, in the white wilderness, a silver truck was still rolling through the dark. Caleb tightened his coat and whispered to Axel, Come on, partner, let's finish this. Axel gave a short bark, his breath clouding in the air, ready for what came next. Night had fallen heavy over Frost Hollow, the kind of darkness that swallowed the horizon whole. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a stillness so sharp it hummed in the air. Frost glittered on the trees, and the world seemed frozen in breathless silence. But beneath that silence, danger moved. Travis Holt drove his silver pickup down the back road leading to the old trailer park, headlights off. He was 38, a man whose rough hands bore the grime of years in the mines and the stains of whiskey he never stopped drinking. His brown leather jacket was scorched at the sleeve, and his face, pale under the moonlight, was drawn tight with fury and fear. He had lost control of the one person who could destroy him, and tonight he meant to erase the evidence for good. In the bed of the truck, 2 red gas cans rattled with each bump. Travis parked near the edge of the clearing, his breath fogging the air as he stepped out. The trailer where Maya had lived still stood, its windows shattered from the night of violence, now half buried in snow. He unscrewed the first can and began splashing fuel along the base of the walls. "Should have kept your mouth shut, Maya," he muttered, his voice a low growl swallowed by the wind. He lit a match, the tiny flame flickering against the cold, and threw it. The explosion of orange tore through the night like a scream. At that same hour, Officer Caleb Rowan was back in his patrol car, parked along the ridge outside town. The radio crackled faintly with static, the night otherwise dead quiet. Axel lay beside him, half asleep but alert enough that one ear twitched at every noise. Caleb sipped from a thermos of coffee, eyes scanning the snowy road ahead. He hadn't been able to rest since Maya's warning earlier that morning. The thought of Holt out there, desperate and cornered, gnawed at him. When the faint glow appeared on the horizon, a flicker of orange through the pines, his instincts flared like fire. "Axel," he said, already starting the engine. "You see that?" The dog sat up, tail stiff, head pointed toward the glow. Caleb slammed the gear shift and tore down the icy road. As they crested the hill, the flames came into view. The old trailer park, ablaze against the snow. His gut twisted. Damn it. He hit the siren once to cut through the silence and swerved into the clearing. The heat hit immediately, waves of it rolling off the inferno. He jumped out, one arm raised to shield his face from the sparks. "Stay close," he shouted to Axel. The German shepherd bounded beside him, ears back, fur glinting with orange light. The trailer crackled and hissed, the roof beginning to cave. Caleb circled to the far side, hoping to find any sign of movement, anyone trapped. But the place was deserted. No body, no truck, no sign of Holt. Just the fire devouring everything. Then Axel stopped. He barked once, sharp and urgent, pawing at the snow near a half-collapsed step. Caleb turned. Amid the smoke and heat, something blackened and fluttering caught the light. A small notebook, half-burned at the edges, lay pinned beneath debris. Caleb grabbed a metal rod and used it to lift the burning scrap off. He wrapped his gloved hand around the book and dragged it free, smothering the flames in the snow. When he flipped it open, he saw names and numbers written in Maya's handwriting. Delivery routes, payment sums, initials scribbled in haste. One name jumped out, Councilman H. Merton. A man Caleb had seen shaking hands with the sheriff at town events, always dressed in crisp suits, always smiling too easily. He froze, scanning more pages. There were others. J. Keller, S. Dorsey, local officials tied to shipments, cash drops, and fuel tax kickbacks. It wasn't just Holt. It was a network. Caleb's breath came in cold bursts. "My God, Maya." Axel barked again, this time a warning. A sharp crack echoed from the far side of the trailer, followed by a metallic groan. Caleb turned just as the roof began to give way. He dove aside, but a beam of flaming metal crashed down, blocking the way out. Heat rushed at him, fierce and alive. The air turned toxic with smoke. Caleb coughed hard, clutching the notebook to his chest. "Axel!" he shouted through the haze. The dog had already moved. With a growl, Axel lunged through the opening, teeth gripping the sleeve of Caleb's coat. The pull was so forceful it tore fabric as he dragged his handler toward the shattered doorway. Flames clawed at their heels, sparks dancing in the night. The beam above them gave a final shriek before collapsing completely. Axel yanked one last time, pulling Caleb clear just as the roof caved in. They tumbled into the snow together, rolling through the slush until they landed in a heap, smoke curling around them. For a long moment, Caleb just lay there, coughing, staring up at the starless sky. Then he turned to Axel, who was already on his feet, muzzle blackened with soot, chest heaving. "You're insane," Caleb said between breaths, voice rough with relief. "But good job, partner." Axel wagged his tail once, then sat down, licking the ash off his nose. Caleb looked at the inferno one last time. The trailer had collapsed entirely now, a smoldering skeleton against the night. He clutched the notebook tighter, the edges still warm. That small, singed object might be the key to unraveling everything. The sound of distant sirens broke the stillness. Backup from Frost Hollow, finally catching up. Red and blue lights painted the snow as Sheriff Dana Whitmore arrived, stepping out of her vehicle in her long dark coat, her breath steaming in the cold. "Rowan!" she called, voice carrying over the wind. "Report!" Caleb rose, brushing ash from his uniform. "Arson," he said grimly. "The Reed trailer's gone. I found this." He handed her the notebook, careful not to smudge the charred edges. Dana flipped it open under her flashlight. When she saw the list of names, her expression hardened. "Damn," she whispered. "This goes higher than we thought." "Travis came back to destroy evidence," Caleb said. "He's running scared, but he's not running alone." Dana closed the notebook, tucking it into an evidence bag. "You'll need to rest. You inhaled a lot of smoke." "I'll rest when Holt's in cuffs," he replied. She gave him a long look, then nodded. "Then we move at first light." Caleb turned back toward the fire, the reflection of the flames dancing in his eyes. The night wind carried the smell of burnt wood and gasoline. He crouched to pat Axel's neck, fingers brushing through the soot-dark fur. "We're getting close," he murmured. Axel tilted his head, then gave a low, soft sound, something between a whine and a sigh. Together they watched the last of the trailer collapse into embers, sparks rising like ghosts into the dark. Morning crept slowly over Frost Hollow, a pale sun struggling through a curtain of frost. The storm had passed, but the air still carried that raw, metallic bite that cut through every breath. At the sheriff's station, the faint smell of burnt coffee mixed with damp wool and tension. Maps and photographs were pinned across the boardroom wall, arrows, notes, and faces forming a web of names that all pointed toward one man: Travis Holt. Sheriff Dana Whitmore stood at the head of the table, a steaming mug in one hand, her other hand tracing a red line that ran from Windriver Quarry down to the rail yard warehouses. Her coat hung over a chair, and her holster rested loosely on her hip. At 51, she carried herself like a woman who'd long stopped caring about the cold. Her sharp eyes, however, missed nothing. "We've got one chance to take them alive," she said. "Holt's moving a new shipment tonight, bigger than anything before. If we catch him with it, we end this." Caleb sat across from her, uniform still dusted with soot from the night before. His eyes were tired but alive with focus. Axel, lying at his feet, raised his head whenever the word Holt was mentioned, as though even the sound of the man's name was enough to rouse his instincts. "Location?" Caleb asked. Dana tapped a section of the map near the rail lines. "An abandoned freight depot east of town. Used to store lumber before the recession. Locals report lights there last night. Fits the pattern." She looked up at him. "You and Axel will lead recon. Stay out of sight. If they're there, I want proof before we move in." Caleb nodded. "Understood." Dana exhaled, her breath forming a faint mist in the cold air that leaked through the window cracks. "And Rowan—" She paused, lowering her voice. "This isn't just Holt anymore. The names in that notebook, they go high. Be careful who you call for backup." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You think someone inside the department's dirty?" "I think," she said quietly, "someone's been helping him stay invisible for years." Caleb exchanged a look with Axel, who blinked up at him as if to say, "Then it's just us again." By late afternoon, the temperature had dropped. The rail yard sat at the edge of Frost Hollow's industrial district, a skeletal stretch of warehouses and rusted freight cars. Snow blanketed everything except the twin tire tracks leading up to the main building. Caleb parked his SUV a quarter-mile out and continued on foot. He wore his dark sheriff's jacket, fur collar pulled up against the wind, and a black knit cap tucked under his hood. Axel padded beside him, silent as shadow, his breath ghosting in short bursts. Through the binoculars, Caleb could see it, an old brick warehouse with broken windows patched with plywood. A dim orange light glowed faintly inside. Outside, a silver pickup truck, unmistakable even from this distance. The same dented bumper Maya had described. "There you are," Caleb whispered. He crouched behind a stack of old rail ties, camera lens peeking just above the snow, He zoomed in, catching movement inside. Two men unloading crates, their figures backlit by a single hanging bulb. A third figure paced nearby, heavy-set, bundled in a tan coat. Even from this far, Caleb knew the stride. Travis Holt. He hit record on his camera. "Got you," he murmured. Axel gave a low rumble, tail stiff. Caleb froze. "What is it, boy?" The dog's gaze wasn't fixed on the warehouse, but somewhere farther down the snowy track. Caleb turned. In the distance, a small figure trudged toward the depot, tiny footprints winding in the snow. The sight made Caleb's heart stop for a beat. It was Noah. The boy wore a navy parka, too big for his small frame, and his mother's scarf wrapped loosely around his neck. In his mittened hands, he clutched something that glinted in the faint light, a silver necklace, small and delicate. "Oh, no," Caleb breathed. Noah had slipped away from the station. The boy must have waited until everyone was busy. Caleb remembered the words he'd overheard from him earlier that morning. "I just want to give Mama the last thing Dad gave her." He was carrying that very necklace now, heading straight into danger. Axel growled softly, restless. Caleb touched his shoulder. "Stay," he whispered, though his own pulse was pounding. Through the binoculars he saw Noah creeping closer, drawn by curiosity and the orange glow of the warehouse. The boy's steps were careful but clumsy in the deep snow. One of Holt's men stepped outside for a smoke, his flashlight beam sweeping lazily over the snow and nearly catching the boy's shadow. Caleb's training kicked in. He slung his camera over his shoulder, moving fast and low through the drifts, Axel close behind. The sound of the wind masked his approach, but every second felt like a countdown. When he reached the rail car closest to the depot, he crouched behind it. He could hear the men now, voices echoing through the half-open door. "Shipment's late," one grumbled. Holt's rough voice followed. "It'll come. The storm slowed things, but it's coming. Once we move it across the ridge, no one can touch us. Not Rowan, not the sheriff, nobody." Caleb clenched his jaw. He peeked around the corner just as Holt lit a cigarette. His face glowed orange in the light, a face twisted by greed and arrogance. Axel's ears flattened. The dog tensed, muscles coiling. Caleb could tell he wanted to lunge, to end it right there. "Not yet," he whispered. "We wait." But waiting was no longer an option. A faint crunch of snow sounded to their right. Noah had stepped too close. The beam of the guard's flashlight snapped toward the sound. "Hey, what was that?" the guard barked. Noah froze, wide-eyed. The man's flashlight locked on him, and for a second, both were motionless in the glow. Then the man reached for his gun. Caleb moved before thought. "Axel, go!" he shouted, breaking cover. Axel sprang forward, a blur of muscle and snow, slamming into the man's arm before he could fire. The weapon flew from his hand, clattering across the ice. Caleb rushed in, tackling the second man who'd appeared at the door. The third, Holt, spun around, eyes wide with shock. "Rowan," he snarled, "you just don't quit, do you?" "Not my style." Caleb shot back, pulling his service weapon. Holt ducked behind a crate, grabbing a shotgun from the pile. A blast shattered the side of a rail car, sending splinters through the air. Caleb dove behind cover, snow exploding around him. "Noah, down!" he shouted. The boy scrambled behind Axel, clutching the necklace to his chest. A whistle pierced the chaos. Distant sirens. Backup. Caleb didn't know if Dana had tracked the GPS from his cruiser or if the gunfire had drawn someone's attention, but he didn't question it. He just needed to keep everyone alive until help arrived. He peeked around the corner again, firing once. The bullet struck Holt's shoulder, spinning him back with a grunt. The shotgun fell, skidding across the floor. Holt glared, clutching his arm, then bolted for the rear exit. "Axel, track!" Caleb ordered. The dog tore after him, paws kicking up snow. Holt disappeared into the trees beyond the depot, but Axel was faster. By the time Caleb reached Noah, the boy was shaking, but unharmed. "You shouldn't be here," Caleb said, kneeling to meet his eyes. Noah's voice trembled. "I just wanted to bring this to Mama. It was Dad's. She dropped it that night. Caleb looked down at the necklace, a small silver pendant shaped like a feather. He closed the boy's hand around it. You can give it to her yourself once this is over, but you can't scare me like that again, all right? The boy nodded quickly, tears freezing on his cheeks. Axel barked in the distance, the sound echoing through the trees. Caleb turned toward it, gun raised. The chase wasn't over yet, but at least now they weren't running blind. The night air stung his face as he called over his shoulder, "Stay behind the car, Noah, no matter what." Then he disappeared into the dark after his partner, the snow swallowing his footprints one by one. Snow fell in heavy sheets over the rail yard, turning the night into a blur of white and shadow. The flickering light from the half-broken lamp outside the warehouse cast long, shifting silhouettes across the snow. Somewhere inside, a child's terrified voice echoed faintly. Noah Reed, calling out for help. Officer Caleb Rowan moved fast, his boots crunching over the frost, gun drawn and breath clouding in short bursts. His face was tight with focus, every nerve stretched thin. The storm had worsened, wind biting through his jacket as he followed the sound. Axel, his German shepherd, ran close at his side, fur bristling, eyes glinting amber through the dim. At the far end of the warehouse, the door hung ajar. Inside, the faint orange glow of lanterns illuminated a scene that made Caleb's blood run cold. Travis Holt, shoulders hunched, face streaked with soot and blood, had one arm wrapped around Noah's neck, the other clutching a pistol pressed against the boy's temple. "Don't move!" Holt shouted, his voice cracking under pressure. "You come one step closer, and the kid dies!" Caleb froze in the doorway, gun steady but low. "Put it down, Travis. It's over." The man's eyes twitched. He was a wreck. His tan coat was torn and soaked from the snow, and his hands shook from adrenaline or fear. His once broad frame seemed smaller now, eaten away by panic. "You think you've won, Rowan? You have no idea who you're fighting. You arrest me, and half this town burns with me." "Then start talking," Caleb said, voice calm, almost too calm. "Who's helping you?" Holt laughed, but it came out as a cough. "Ask your boss," he spat. "Ask the sheriff who's been covering the shipments for years." Caleb's grip tightened. "You're lying." "Am I?" Travis sneered, pushing the gun harder against Noah's head. The boy whimpered, clutching the silver necklace in his small hands. Caleb's heart lurched. He knew one wrong move could end it all. Behind him, Axel let out a low growl. Not loud, but deep, like a warning rolling from the earth itself. The dog's muscles tensed, his gaze locked on Travis. "Call off your mutt!" Travis barked. Caleb didn't move. "Let the boy go, and I will." "No deal!" Travis shouted, backing up toward a pile of crates stacked near the wall. "You're going to drop that gun right now, or he dies." Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, closer every second. The red and blue lights flashed against the snow through the shattered windows, painting the scene in pulses of color. "Listen to me, Travis," Caleb said evenly. "The sheriff's coming. You've got one chance to walk out alive. Don't waste it." Travis's eyes darted toward the door, calculating. His voice cracked again. "You don't get it, Rowan. They'll kill me if I talk." "They'll kill you if you don't," Caleb replied. For a moment, only the wind answered, moaning through the gaps in the walls. Then Holt's hand trembled. He shifted slightly, his focus flickering. That's when Caleb saw it, the brief opening. "Axel," he whispered. The dog tensed, eyes blazing. It happened fast. Travis caught the movement, fired a wild shot toward the doorway. The sound thundered in the confined space. Caleb dropped to one knee, firing back, a controlled shot that hit the metal beam behind Travis's shoulder, showering sparks. In that same heartbeat, Axel lunged. A blur of motion and fur, the German shepherd launched himself across the distance, teeth clamping down on Travis's gun arm. The man screamed, the pistol firing once into the ceiling. Snow fell through the cracks above as Axel growled, refusing to let go. "No!" Noah shouted, ducking away just as Caleb moved in. "Drop it, Travis!" Caleb roared, his voice echoing through the warehouse. Travis, desperate, swung his free hand toward Axel, pulling the trigger again. The sound ripped through the room. Axel yelped, staggering, but didn't retreat. His jaws locked tighter, forcing Travis's hand away from the boy. Caleb closed the distance, slamming into the man with his shoulder. They both hit the ground hard, gun skidding across the floor. Caleb drove his knee into Travis's chest, wrenching his arm back until the man screamed in pain. "It's over!" Caleb shouted again, pinning him to the floor. Travis spat blood. "You can't stop it. You think you're saving this town? They're already inside it." Caleb cuffed him, shoving his face into the cold concrete. "Then I'll dig them out, one by one." Axel limped over, whimpering softly, a dark patch spreading across his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. Caleb's chest tightened at the sight. "Easy, buddy," he murmured, patting the dog's neck. "You're okay. You did good." Noah crawled forward, tears streaking his face, and hugged Axel's neck. The dog licked his cheek once before settling beside him. Sirens wailed closer now. The doors burst open, and the beam of flashlights cut through the smoke. Sheriff Dana Whitmore entered first, flanked by 2 deputies. She wore her long navy trench coat over her uniform, snow clinging to the brim of her hat. "Rowan," she called, gun raised. "You good?" "Got him," Caleb said, hauling Travis upright and pushing him toward the deputies. Dana's gaze swept the room, Travis bleeding, the boy shaking, the wounded dog by Caleb's side. "Hell of a mess," she muttered, then nodded to her men. "Secure him, and get paramedics for that dog." Travis laughed hoarsely as they dragged him away. "You think it ends with me, Sheriff? Wait till you open that notebook. Let's see whose name you find there." Dana's expression hardened. "Take him out." When the noise settled, she turned to Caleb. "He hit Axel?" "Grazed shoulder," Caleb said quietly. "He'll make it." Dana crouched, beside the dog, stroking his fur gently. "Braver than most men I know." Noah, still clutching his mother's necklace, looked up. "He saved me. Twice." Dana smiled faintly. "Then he's a hero." Outside, the storm had stopped. The air was eerily calm, the snow now falling soft and slow, like the world was catching its breath after the chaos. The deputies loaded Travis into the cruiser, his curses fading as the doors slammed shut. Caleb stepped outside, the bitter wind cooling the sweat on his neck. He watched the headlights pull away down the icy road, carrying Holt toward a future he couldn't run from. Beside him, Axel leaned gently against his leg, still trembling but standing tall. Caleb rested a hand on his back. "You're tougher than me, pal," he said softly. Sheriff Dana came up beside them, arms crossed. "We got them all. The warehouse, the ledgers, the payments, it's all here. Enough to blow open the corruption that's been choking this county for years." Caleb nodded. "Then maybe tonight wasn't just about survival. Maybe it's a start." She gave him a rare smile. "Get the boy home. His mom's been asking for him every hour." Caleb turned to Noah, who stood quietly watching the snow. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Ready to go see your mom?" The boy nodded, still holding Axel's paw gently. "Only if he comes too." Caleb smiled. "Wouldn't dream of leaving him behind." They walked together toward the waiting car, the officer, the boy, and the wounded dog, leaving behind the faint smoke of a fire now extinguished and the shattered echoes of a long, dark night finally breaking apart. Morning came slow and tender over Frost Hollow Medical Center, a low sun spilling pale gold through the icy windows. Inside, the halls smelled of antiseptic and coffee, a fragile calm replacing the chaos of the night before. Outside, the world gleamed white again, as if the storm had wiped the slate clean. In a small room near the end of the corridor, Axel lay on a padded recovery bed, his thick sable and black fur shaved slightly around his injured shoulder. A bandage wrapped the wound tight, and a faint hum of medical equipment filled the air. His chest rose and fell in slow rhythm, breath steady but shallow. At his side sat Noah Reed, still in his oversized navy parka, his boots dangling off the chair. The boy's small hand rested gently on the dog's paw, unwilling to let go even for a moment. He hadn't spoken much since the night of the warehouse. His eyes, though red and weary, carried a quiet determination beyond his years. Every few minutes, he whispered something to Axel, soft, secret promises that only the dog could hear. When the door opened, Officer Caleb Rowan stepped in. He looked different in the morning light, no longer the cold, unshakable lawman of the night before, but a man hollowed by exhaustion and yet softened by gratitude. His navy uniform jacket hung open, his badge dulled by soot and snow. In his hands was a steaming cup of black coffee he'd nearly forgotten to drink. "How's he holding up?" Caleb asked quietly. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the town's veterinarian who had assisted the emergency team, turned from the chart in her hands. She was in her late 30s, with calm gray eyes and short auburn hair tucked under a white cap. Her flannel shirt peeked out from under her medical coat, a reminder that in Frost Hollow everyone wore more than one hat. "He's lucky," she said, offering a tired smile. "Bullet missed the bone. We cleaned the wound and stitched it up. He'll limp for a while, but he'll recover." Caleb nodded, his jaw tightening. "He's been through worse." Evelyn tilted her head. "You too, I imagine." He gave a faint, humorless chuckle. "Yeah, you could say that." She placed a gentle hand on Axel's side. "He's got the heart of a soldier. That kind doesn't give up easy." When she left, Caleb sat beside Noah. For a long while, they watched Axel together in silence. The boy finally broke it. "He didn't run," Noah said softly. "He could have run away, but he stayed. He saved me." Caleb looked down at him, voice steady. "That's what he does. He saves people, even when they don't deserve it." Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" Caleb leaned back in his chair, gaze unfocused. "I wasn't always here, doing this." He paused. "Before Frost Hollow, I served overseas. Afghanistan, mostly. Patrol duty, like now, except the stakes were different. One night, our convoy hit an IED. I was the only one conscious after the blast. Fire everywhere. Smoke thick as night. I thought it was over." He looked at Axel, his voice dropping lower. "But then I heard barking. This crazy German shepherd, half-starved, stray from the base, dragged me out from under the wreck. Stayed with me till evac came. That dog died 3 days later from shrapnel in his lungs. When I came home, I found Axel in a canine training unit. Same breed, same eyes, felt like maybe it wasn't over after all." Noah listened in silence, his small hand tightening on Axel's paw. "So, he saved you twice," the boy said. Caleb smiled faintly. "Yeah, in more ways than one." Just then, the door creaked open again. Maya Reed entered quietly, her hair tied loosely, wearing a worn beige coat over a wool sweater. Her face was still pale but no longer bruised, and her eyes carried a gentleness Caleb hadn't seen before. In her hands was a small thermos and 2 paper cups. "I figured you haven't eaten since yesterday," she said, setting them down. "It's just soup, chicken and rice. The only thing I can make without burning the kitchen." Caleb chuckled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Maya replied. "You risked your life for me and my boy. I don't have much, but I can at least make sure you don't freeze or starve." He accepted the cup, the steam curling in the cold air. The warmth was more than physical. "Thank you," he said quietly. Noah looked up at his mother. "Mama, Axel's gonna be okay." Maya smiled, kneeling beside him. She ran her hand gently over the dog's head. "I know, sweetheart. He's tougher than all of us." Axel's ear flicked at her touch, and for a moment he opened one eye, looking between the 3 of them, as if making sure everyone was accounted for before drifting back to sleep. They sat together for a long while, listening to the steady rhythm of the snow tapping against the window. Outside, Frost Hollow looked almost peaceful again, the chaos of the last few days buried beneath clean, white drifts. Caleb finally spoke. "When I first got to this town, I told myself I wouldn't get attached. Just do the job, keep my head down, move on." He looked at the boy, then at Maya. "Then I met people worth staying for." Maya's eyes glistened. "You helped us believe again, Officer Rowan. In kindness, in protection." He shook his head gently. "No, ma'am. That's something your boy reminded me of. He ran through a blizzard to save his mother. That kind of courage, that's rare. You don't teach it, you're born with it." Maya smiled softly, then reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out the silver necklace, the one Noah had nearly died protecting, and looked at Axel. "This belongs to him now," she said. Caleb blinked. "You sure? That was your husband's." Maya nodded. He'd have wanted it to go to a protector, someone who gave everything without asking anything back. She slipped the chain carefully over Axel's neck, letting the feather-shaped pendant rest against his fur. "It's a thank you. From both of us." Axel stirred slightly, tail twitching. Even half asleep, he seemed to sense the gesture. Noah grinned. "He looks like a hero now." Caleb smiled. He always did. The sun climbed higher, painting the room in golden light. For the first time in weeks, it felt like warmth had returned to Frost Hollow, fragile but real. Caleb sipped his soup. Maya leaned back against the wall, and Noah dozed beside the bed, his small hand still resting on Axel's paw. Outside, the snow glittered like shards of glass, but inside something mended. Quiet, unseen, but powerful. And in that fragile moment of peace, Caleb realized the truth. Heroes didn't always wear badges or walk on two legs. Sometimes they healed not with weapons, but with loyalty. Spring crept gently into Frost Hollow, melting away the last breath of winter like forgiveness washing over an old wound. The snow that once blanketed every rooftop now lingered only in thin silver lines along the fence posts and shadows. Birds returned to the pines, their morning songs rising through the crisp air like prayers carried heavenward. At the edge of town, where the forest met the river bend, a small wooden cafe had appeared, warm light glowing from its wide windows, the faint scent of roasted beans and vanilla drifting into the breeze. Above the door hung a carved wooden sign, Axel's Brew. Inside, Maya Reed moved behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She looked different now, stronger, calmer, her smile no longer guarded. She wore a soft gray sweater and denim apron, the kind that carried faint stains of coffee and care. The cafe was modest, a few mismatched tables, shelves lined with jars of homemade cookies, and a wall filled with photos of the town's rescue dogs and volunteers. But it was hers, and for the first time in years, she could breathe without fear. The morning rush was small, just the familiar faces of Frost Hollow. Sheriff Dana Whitmore stopped by in her uniform, leaning against the counter with her usual gruff charm. "You've turned this place into a real landmark," she said, lifting her cup. "Best coffee this side of Wyoming." Maya chuckled. High praise coming from the sheriff. Dana smiled faintly, her sharp eyes softening. "After everything you've been through, you earned this peace." She glanced toward the window. "And it looks like you've got your guardian out front again." Through the glass, Axel lay on the porch, one paw crossed over the other, tail thumping lazily against the wood. The silver feather pendant still hung from his collar, glinting in the sunlight. He was older now, the scar on his shoulder hidden beneath thick fur, but his eyes carried that same fierce warmth. A small bell above the door jingled, and Officer Caleb Rowan stepped in, his uniform replaced by a flannel shirt and dark jeans. He carried himself with the relaxed air of a man who had finally learned to slow down. "Morning," he said, tipping his head with a faint grin. "Morning, officer," Maya teased. "Or do I call you just Caleb now?" "Let's keep it unofficial today," he replied. She poured him a cup, the rich aroma filling the space between them. "The usual?" "Always." He took a seat near the window, his gaze drawn to the porch where Axel dozed in the sunlight. "He likes the smell of this place." Maya smiled. "So do I." From the back room came laughter. Small, bright, unrestrained. Noah ran out onto the porch, clutching a squeaky toy in one hand and a bundle of fur in the other. "Mom, look!" he called. Behind him, 3 tiny German Shepherd puppies tumbled after, yipping and chasing one another through the grass. Maya's laughter filled the cafe. "Careful, sweetheart. They're still learning where their legs go. Caleb stepped outside, crouching beside Axel. The dog opened one eye, huffed contentedly, and pressed his head into Caleb's hand. "Still keeping everyone in line, huh, partner?" he murmured. Axel gave a slow wag of his tail, then turned his gaze toward the pups. They were rescues, found weeks ago in a derelict kennel on the edge of the mountain range. Caleb had led the raid, Axel by his side. The sight of those frightened, shivering animals had stirred something deep in all of them. Now, watching the puppies wrestle in the sunlight, it felt like a promise kept, the world finding a way to heal itself. Noah knelt beside Axel, one arm draped over the dog's back. "He saved them, too," the boy said proudly. "He's like a hero twice." Caleb smiled. "Yeah, guess he doesn't know how to retire." The morning unfolded softly. The hum of conversation, the hiss of steam, the clatter of cups. Maya moved easily through it all, her laughter weaving through the cafe like light through lace. Every now and then, she would glance toward the window, catching Caleb's eye. There was something unspoken there. Gratitude, perhaps something more, but neither felt the need to define it. By late afternoon, the last customers drifted out, leaving the quiet hum of the coffee grinder and the rustle of wind through the open door. Caleb helped Maya close up, stacking chairs while Noah filled the puppy's bowl outside. "You ever think you'd end up here?" she asked, wiping down the counter. He shook his head. "Not even close." "And now?" He looked out the window, where Axel and Noah lay side by side in the grass, the puppies climbing over them like a living blanket of joy. "Now I think maybe this is exactly where I was supposed to end up." Maya smiled softly. Funny how life works. The worst nights bring us to the brightest mornings. Caleb turned back to her. "You should put that on the sign out front." She laughed. "Maybe I will." The sky began to change, streaks of pink and gold spreading across the horizon. Maya grabbed 2 mugs of coffee, nodding toward the door. "Come on, let's not miss it." They stepped outside, joining Noah and Axel at the edge of the clearing. The sun climbed higher over the ridge, spilling light across the snow-capped hills. The air shimmered, golden and alive. Axel lifted his head, watching the sunrise with a calm that felt almost human. The silver feather pendant caught the light, reflecting a small flare of brilliance. Caleb reached down, resting a hand on his partner's back. Noah leaned into his mother's side, eyes wide with wonder. For a long while, none of them spoke. The moment didn't need words. It was a picture of everything they had fought for: survival, peace, and the kind of love that endures through scars. As the sun broke fully, over the horizon, Maya whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "God sends angels in many forms." Caleb finished the thought with a quiet smile. "And sometimes they have pause." The wind stirred gently through the pines, carrying the warmth of spring across Frost Hollow, a new beginning born from the ashes of winter. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. He sends them with paws, fur, and hearts strong enough to heal the broken. Axel was more than a dog. He was a living reminder that faith can take any form, that love can rebuild what violence tried to destroy, and that loyalty is one of the purest reflections of divine grace. Through him, Caleb found redemption, Maya found peace, and little Noah discovered courage beyond his years. In our everyday lives, we might not face burning warehouses or blizzards in the dark, but we all face storms of the heart: fear, loss, loneliness, doubt. And just like Axel, there's always something or someone God places in our path to guide us through. Maybe a friend, a stranger, or even a small act of kindness that reminds us we're not alone. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us what you believe miracles look like in your life. And if you believe that God still sends angels to walk among us, sometimes on 4 legs, type Amen in the comments. May God bless you and everyone watching, and may His love continue to shine through every act of kindness, every rescued soul, and every faithful heart that refuses to give up.